It needs to be felt. You have to feel stuff and experience it. And if you do turn it around and point it back out, then you're not really taking it on and being open to it. You're shutting doors.
You're shutting doors. So if the tools are ways to shut doors to feelings or create more distance from feelings, then that's easily a way to exile inner children and emotions in your true voice. And it also validates that it's dangerous to feel. The more tools you have to police and worry and jump all over the place to manage feelings and however you want to frame it, the more you're validating that it's taboo, it's dangerous to be authentic, to be spontaneous, to take risks.
I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I think that the tools could either be used as a way of distraction or the tools can be leveraged to better express the emotions.
Yeah, but I don't trust a superego. Why would you trust a superego? Isn't there some saying like power corrupts infinitely or something like that?
Absolute
So your
power corrupts,
superego's been in
absolutely.
charge forever. You give it more tools. Why wouldn't it use it for its own benefit, its own survival?
Be more absolute. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's saying, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes this is needing to call out the superego and the desire of it to survive, the defenses, give it space to take up space and distract and whatnot, because it's been doing a job for a long time. So just trying to think you can bypass it or outsmart it, that'll give more fuel to the superego. So by trying to say, okay, this toxic superego interject, it's like an AI program that just wants to eat up everything. But I see you, and your inner children are still controlling the attention. They're still guiding the feelings. The feelings are still being acted out one way or another. Oh, this is the tricky thing. Fundamental attribution bias, is that the technical term? Fundamental attribution error. And post hoc rationalizations. So your ego, your superego, can use all this energy to rewrite history and claim that the tools are working. You can claim attribution bias and say, oh, I was part of it. You can claim ownership of intent in all these results where it was a different factor.
Mm-hmm.
So you're wasting all this energy to create this illusion that the superego is managing stuff and working, where it's just all made up shit. Wouldn't it be more useful to have all this creative energy to be put towards going after your goals? Getting your needs and wants met, spending time with your inner children to try to figure out what are some unmet wants and needs. Instead, if you're wasting all your energy trying to post hoc rationalize anything, to say you intended it and you planned it, or you can fix it by doing this little tweak, constantly shape-shifting to change history to create this illusion of more control than the evidence shows. Is that very efficient? Is that very compassionate? Gordon Neufeld has this like picture of a sign that says "grow," and then Harvard students like took this sign and showed it to like a bunch of caterpillars, and over time, just this exposure of this sign that says "grow" somehow turned them into butterflies. So this sign that was flooded towards them that they just kept showing to them, and they had to hold it at a certain angle, and that caused this butterfly transformation. So the ego, academics will come up with all kinds of reasons, cause and effect. A lot of times it's just made up. It's just a wrong link. And when you have a bunch of conflict-averse therapists and type of people who are worried about
terror of negative emotions in yourself and in others. Terror of negative emotions in yourself and in others. Terror of negative emotions.
They want a sense of control where it was maybe just random.
Well, I mean, human beings are rationalization engines, yes. And that's a very fundamental issue.
So that all there.
That aphorism sort of killed the emotional mood of my statement. Do you see how your inner child is still guiding stuff?
I mean, somewhat, not completely.
See, so if your inner child doesn't have the life skill of taking risks and fucking up and making mistakes and playing in the land of verbal combat, since this is the theme of healing from narcissistic relationships, so that's verbal combat. Would be a nice link to cluster B type of interactions, right?
Yep.
So if your inner child is not comfortable feeling exposed, shame, guilt, whatever kind of negative emotions, then your superego jumps in to protect it, well-meaning, through intellectualization, all these other tools. The more tools you have to get you away from negative emotions, to intellectualize, to numb your emotions, the more your inner child is going to have less expression, and you're going to be more afraid to take risks.
Yes.
So actually, it ends up being counterproductive that the more skills you have with your fawn self, your superego interactions, the more regressed your inner child is at learning how to express and feel all kinds of emotions.
Right, and that's why, part of the reason that I'm here and trying to take more advantage of the, I mean, not safe, but this environment, and to learn to be more assertive, or at least, try to speak up more, try to engage more in this. And it's unfortunate that,
you started part of the reason why you're here. Get to the point. Take a position.
I misunderstood.
Okay, you feel misunderstood. Okay. Yes. And then what kind of resolution or what kind of ask are you trying to get from group members with your feeling of misunderstoodness?
I would like to feel that I belong and not be rejected by this group.
Okay, let me type that down. I would like to feel like I belong. And, so this is a double ask, not be rejected by the group.
Yes.
So if you're able to get some time and space, even though the questions and the feedback isn't ideal, is that enough to make you feel like you feel like you belong? How do we evaluate your feeling of belonging?
Running that banner is the question?
No, I'm trying to remember your ask. You said, I would like to feel like I belong and not be rejected by the group. I'm sticking on the first part.
Yes.
You're here, you're not kicked out, so
Mhm.
I consider that not rejected. I'm not actively attacking you. Trust me, if I was, you would see. So I would focus on the first part.
Mhm.
You would like to feel like you belong. How do we gauge that? Do you want us to check in every 30 minutes and see what your belonging feels like, and what's the protocol so that we have some control over this? Because I usually don't track this with other people. I'll be honest. I don't even track this for myself, so I don't know.
Exactly. That's why I raised this, and that this is a, I guess,
No, I
fear
asked
of
you
my
a
inner
question.
child.
I need
Yeah.
help. I'm asking you for help. I'm not asking you for why you brought it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I mean, while I'm saying it, what would be a useful measure for me?
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling scared. I mean, I'm feeling that, uncomfortable. I don't want to fall into that same bad pattern in that first meeting.
This is also part of a peer orientation instead of adult leadership. You're stuck in the past and you're trying to prevent past mistakes, which makes you sort of distracted from looking at present moment and future goals.
Yes.
Because you can always second guess. There's probably some saying about that too. My brain isn't good with aphorisms, but you can second guess up everything. You can look back in the past and you can always find a flaw because everything can be done better. But if you obsess about all the mistakes and all the potential things you missed out, you're not paying attention to the now. And you don't have as much space to pay attention to where you're going.
That's very true.
So this is a tough topic of, there's peer-to-peer interactions now. And parents and children are also peer-to-peer. And this excess peer-to-peer interaction has taken away adult leadership. We don't have mentors and people that are taking the lead to role model how to look to the future and get shit done. Sloppily. It's more important to get stuff done instead of not make mistakes. But if we had a generation and generation of people that are peer-led, and when you go to school, you're only with peers, and you're taking classes of the same level of skill all over the place, you don't have the differential of seeing somebody that's higher or lower. You aren't training somebody. You aren't playing different roles of leadership and following. It's more important to get stuff done instead of not make mistakes. And then all you're doing is you're focused on where's belonging. Because when you have too much peers and no hierarchy, no structure, you just don't want to get exiled from the group. You become like a feral child.
I mean,
You're never stable.
Yeah, it's it's peers in the broader sense that one can end up in certain.
No, this is the time where you can reflect back to me how much you agree, disagree, or have taken in my argument, not to add on and redirect to a different direction. You can do that after you sort of reflected whether you comprehended anything I said.
Yes, I understood what you said about tracking peers versus leaders.
Do you have any opinions of what I said first before you add your counter?
No, it's not a counter. I agree with what you said.
Is there more curiosity? Because I'm not just asking for agreement. I'm trying to evoke interest to say, how would adult leadership look? Why else would I take up all this space to try to set this up without trying to create some incentive in your mind to want to explore this old path of adult leadership mentorship that might be missing in society.
Well, what would you suggest as a way to obtain more of that adult leadership?
By trying to create incentive first. Desire, evoke emotions. It's more important to get stuff done instead of not make mistakes. This is how humans work. If you want to persuade a person, you have to give them a reason to change a pattern. And if the peer orientation is a very immersive, entrenched norm of society, arguing to change that would require a lot of motivation. It would require a lot of incentive. Just throwing it out there as an answer isn't enough.
Right. So again, do you have any experience or advice on how you would try to motivate people to change their perspective and be more leadership oriented?
Why would I intro the topic if I didn't have anything?
Okay, then can you suggest them?
I'm trying to get oriented to where the followers are so I can lead. But if the followers are not telling me where you aren't being a good follower, so you can't be led. You aren't being a good follower, so you can't be led. Can't be led. Can't be led. This is part of the peer orientation. Everyone thinks they're a peer, and they think they can critique anything and everything and say, that's not good enough, and just all this second-guessing stuff. That's not how adult leadership works. You aren't being a good follower, so you can't be led. There's an advantage to peer leadership, because you can always tear everyone down to the same level. But then when you tear everyone down to the same level, there's no belonging. No one has any security. No one has tenure. Everyone can be canceled.
And I mean, you've taught us, Dave, about topping from the bottom already.
Yeah.
And this is that.
That dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. He's topping from the bottom. No offense, David. I want to be your buddy, but you're making it impossible, honestly. You just keep going.
But you're doing a good example of why not to change. You aren't being a good follower, so you can't be led.
So, David,
now, David, topping from the bottom, do you have any idea what that means?
Not completely, but I can imagine.
What do you think of it? What do you feel about that?
I mean, it seems like an insult.
What if it's true? What if it's
I'm not saying
20% true or 40% true?
It was 100%. It's not a...
Okay. Let's say it's 100% true and it's an insult. Okay. If it's 100% true...
It can be 100% true as an insult and 100% true as what I'm doing. I'm not questioning. I mean...
I want you to question. That's taking leadership. You want to question your behavior instead of just tearing down anybody who takes the lead. That's the pure orientation. You aren't being a good follower, so you can't be led. That's maturity.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a parent, don't you want them to pay the bills and get the food?
Yes.
So if they can't pay the bills, then they get kicked out. So you want them to take the lead and figure out how to pay the bills, right? You don't want them to just blame it on politics or something and just let the whole family fall apart.
Yes, that wouldn't be very beneficial to the family.
Wouldn't be very responsible. You would want the parent, the adult, to feel guilty. If you have
terror of negative emotions in yourself and in others, terror
And
of
if one of the main terror of negative
in yourself
emotions,
and in others, terror
with this
of negative
minefield
emotions
on a daily
in
basis,
yourself,
what you have to do, run all the way around your own minds. Oh, circuitous route.
and you're avoiding guilt. If you're feeling guilty because you're not leading your life like an adult, and you use all the tools to avoid guilt, you use all the tools to make other people feel guilty from a pure orientation, where are you going to go?
And go in terms of, I mean,
You go in
not to go
circles.
in-
That'd be my argument. And you'll still feel guilty, but you need to find somebody else to poke and prod from a pure orientation. Tear down one leader, tear down this system, tear down this system. There's never going to be a system that's going to be perfect.
Correct. Of course.
There's never going to be a system that's going to be perfect fit for you, because you have to discover, you have to make whatever system you have, make it work. That's the adult perspective.
I mean, system in terms of environment or systems in terms of behavior, or both?
Yeah,
Okay.
I stopped listening. You aren't being a good follower, so you can't be led.
Well, I'm trying to
If you
respond
talk
to
from
your
the
comment.
bottom and you brat, there's a lot of payoff in our society now. And narcissists do it too. So everyone sort of plays the victim. But when you play the victim, you're putting the responsibility on somebody else's hand. Then you just gotta wait forever. And then the person who's doing it, you get so much apply at tearing them down. You're not encouraging them. So you're not giving them motivation to lead very well, because you just poke not good enough. You throw rocks at them and whatever, you give injunctions and you run away. You're not motivating people to be a parent for you. You aren't being a good follower, so you can't be led. You're just throwing tantrums. And it's not you. I'm saying the system, the current mental health system, is advocating for people to set boundaries, which is just throwing a tantrum and setting boundaries and wanting everybody else to do all the work.
Well, I mean, doesn't that depend on how you set the boundary? I mean, you seem to equate boundary that every boundary is a tantrum, or did I misunderstand?
You misunderstood.
Okay.
Try again. You aren't being a good follower, so you can't be led. Or are you going to just say, I misunderstand, it's my responsibility to make you understand?
Well, it's not your responsibility. You don't need to make, I mean, it's not your responsibility to make me do anything. I mean, I'm not asking that way. I was trying to.
If you want me to lead, you have to be somewhat of a follower to let me know where you are. If I can't find you, and the only thing I'm getting is pure orientation, like going, that's not it, that's not it. How can I lead? That's not it, that's not it. How can I lead?
I don't get this lack of tracking feedback from others, which, I mean, maybe they aren't telling me. So that's why I'm honestly confused about this. I mean,
well, if you're
I'm just very confused.
let's
Yeah.
take it at face value. You're confused. I don't need to know why. I don't need to know the context.
Mhm.
Usually when you're confused, that's the perfect time to ask a question about what you're confused about. Does it work differently in a tech company that researches academic stuff that when you're confused, you're not supposed to ask questions? What? I thought confusions means you go out and ask questions to try to get less confused. Is there a different world out there where confusion means you just shut up and say you're confused a lot and other people have to figure out what you're confused about?
I'm so confused I don't know where to start to ask.
So sorry, David, just to flood the zone again. This is exhausting. And Deef had prepared a whole lecture and now you're it's just fucking exhausting. Like, what are you here for? You're here for some magical supply from
You said he came here for maturity, so we can try to
he said a lot of stuff.
throw him into the
some
fire
of which
to force him to
I
grow
have
up some.
debunked. Okay, well, through direct experience, it's a bunch of bullshit. Why are we taking him at his word at this point? It's just fucking it's exhausting.
Exhausting.
It might be harmful.
Ellie, I came here and was trying to have a conversation.
Ellie, let me just put you in your place right now. Listen,
at the pre-meeting.
As your elder, I'm gonna school you right now, you dumb bitch. Sure, keep going.
I'm sorry that you're interpreting it that way. That's not how I'm trying to express it.
Sure.
Yeah. And you're laughing in a strange way.
Drop another octave and see how that lands. Let's just, yeah, sure.
I tried to ask a question during the pre-meeting, and I thought that
one question. Sure. You tried to answer one question. Sure. What other reframes do you want to give us?
I don't need to give you any more reframes.
Okay, so good. Let's just hang out there. You want to try that? Good. That's what I'm aiming for. Exactly.
So how to continue the argument about adult leadership versus peer orientation. This is, I think it was enacted, sort of this peer orientation, and sometimes that ends up being a dominance battle. But the challenging part from adult orientation is to eventually get everybody else slowly to grow up more by leading and following. And then we can criticize the peer orientation. We can criticize the topping from the bottom routing. So one thing I've noticed in some workshops is that mixed age groups is something that's missing in society now. Nuclear families are not interacting with different generations. There's a lot of self-created friends. So we don't have this bigger family system. So it's even easier to fall into peers. So by not having the exposure of different age groups creates a blind spot. And part of that blind spot is not getting perspectives from people with different life experience, older life experience. And also not being the role of teaching people who maybe have a younger experience. So shape-shifting between generations and age groups is a muscle, I would argue. And it's a muscle that would maybe lead to perspective taking, empathy, communication skills. And the more we teach with tools that you just memorize without actual exposure to mixed age groups, the more you just frustrate people. So this is a story, a question from a principal who was talking about his son and his daughter who had learned adult leadership skills through the game of D&D. And he took some time to think about it, then jumped in and answered it after the other people, because this was a question that he didn't instantly have an answer for. And then I cut out a lot of the ums because this is something more spontaneous, something more from the heart. By having all these sort of mixed age groups, what have you observed or noticed? How does that add things to the mix?
I'm sitting here and I'm reflecting the changes that I've seen in my son, right? So he started gaming probably in 7 to 8 range. I've seen his communication style change. He is a more effective communicator orally, right, and the ideas that he's putting out there.
So one thing I notice when I'm editing is people who are academic, they seem to love adding adjectives. Like Facton's really good at this too. He'll just describe things like with 3 times and bigger words, and then over describe stuff because somehow I'm not sure where they learned this, but this is a pattern that is really annoying to me for editing. It sort of rips away the emotion of the words by adding extra jargon. Maybe our culture punishes people for being too direct and too honest, too simple. So we want to sort of build things up. So even though he's talking about this really touching moment, his son became a more effective communicator. He's really improved in his communication through this, and he's watched it, and it maybe brings him to tears, but he has to say it this way.
One of the really interesting things that I've seen shift in my son, because, right, when you're 7 and 8, everybody you're playing with is older than you, right? Whether it's your parents, whether it's your older buddies. His play experience as a young child was very, very, very egocentric.
So what's egocentrism? That was last week we had like a main character syndrome. Or that someone that's so lost in their story that they aren't tracking the audience. They aren't considering other people's stories. They're so lost in their own egocentric position. They have no allocentric view. They have no meta. They have no larger context. And someone who's egocentric as a codependent, a narcissist would make the codependent or the target more egocentric by trying to poke flaws and getting them to second guess themselves. So then all the stuff that's in the context that's giving clues, that's overlooked because egocentrism. And maybe education reinforces egocentrism because you just need to check boxes. And you can tell yourself stories to soothe yourself, to manage your emotions, but then you're blind to the game. You're blind to the larger context. You're not building the muscle of considering other people's minds, mentalization, empathy, perspective taking. And we can say perspective taking, but that's not building the skill. How did his son learn the skill outside of this? Or how did the son change?
And that translated across to his early attempts to running is storytelling.
So he's able to see his son tell the stories of the role-play game, and they were very egocentric, self-centered.
So he had a story. He wanted to get that story out. And his young, early attempts at running was very much
What he
him.
wanted to do.
Right. It was the DM show. Right?
So it's all about him. Everything was referencing him. There was no room for anybody else's story. And that's sometimes a bad DM, a bad dungeon master. So it has a story and it's not inclusive to the other people, so it's not a good game. So there's a bit of in Dungeons and Dragons or any other game, there's a sort of, at least you want to have more people having fun. If one person has fun and then 5 others are miserable, the game probably isn't going to last very long. So bad DMs are going to just run with their story and just overwrite everybody else's, and it's a miserable experience for people. Then they're not going to be a DM very long, or they have to just keep getting new players.
And as he has gotten older and played with older people, I've watched his gaming style, his play style, and in particular his run style, shift away from that egocentric focus to be better at incorporating others' ideas and others' narratives.
So just from exposure of playing with other people's, more people and older people, and seeing how older people are running, telling their stories, including him or giving him nudges to improve, he is incorporating other people's ways of creating a character and story. And he's also including other people's narratives. Not because some teacher gave him a tool and said, do this, don't do this. Because he used mimicry. He wanted to be included. So maybe he had the feeling of wanting belonging. So he has the feelings of wanting to belong in the game, the group. So he copied how other people played. And he copied how other people played who were more adult than him, who were playing better, instead of just copying other feral characters and mental health groups that are just throwing rocks from who knows where. Or copying other academics who talk in this way with all these extra words, which take away all the emotionality. So he might feel the same thing. He wants to belong and he doesn't want to be rejected. But he's changing. Win-win. He gets a better game. He has a skill. Father's proud. And is there more?
So that has been a really interesting development for me to see in him as a parent, to watch that cognitive change. The other thing that I've seen him run his younger sister. There's about 2 years difference between he and his sister. When he is really concerned with running in a way that gives her as a player a really fulfilling player experience, I can see him employing just some better listening, some more empathy.
So when he cares about his sister's belonging and his sister's game experience, when he's invested through attachment, through caring, then there's better listening and better empathy. If I teach you empathy from a guilt standpoint, like, look at these statistics, being empathetic is a better person, blah, blah, blah. I'm seeding empathy and listening with guilt trips. He's learning empathy and listening because he's invested in his sister's game playing. Or the sister needs to play good so that because the team can kill more monsters in the game. So having a better teammate means he has a better team. So he's invested. So then there's a personal motivation to get better listening and empathy. He's taking the lead after he was a follower. So he was a follower, copied ideas. Now he's a little older, knows the game more. He's more of an adult in the game. Now he's learning other skills at being a leader.
Watch him do some facilitation
Facilitation and teaching.
in teaching, right? Especially explaining some of the rules.
Yeah.
So explaining rules in a game, a sub-game, then people can play fair and they can concede to the rules of the game, concede to the rules of the narrative. It's a subculture to practice restriction and frustration. Because the real world, if you fuck up, you might get kicked out of a group. The rejection cost is high, so having a subgroup, a proxy, to practice going to the edge of rules and how far you can get away with stuff, this is building a muscle that he's building in a proxy environment, not through memorizing. Through helping his sister and getting help by the older players.
That is the growth and development we see when we place young people in positions of leadership. Better at incorporating others' ideas and others' narratives, better listening, some more empathy, facilitation in teaching.
So this was from Friday. Today's Saturday. Yesterday. So I was at a 2-day workshop for using role-playing games and tabletop games for therapy. And then this is a high school principal and teacher who were integrating it in their school system. Does anyone see the links of how this illustrates adult leadership versus peer-to-peer orientation? Do you see how that's different than how mental health and therapy sometimes approaches building these skills? Not only in this game, the game is also fun. So they're incorporating a fun environment that people look forward to, and they're getting this side benefit of empathy, teaching, facilitation skills, narrative communication, all these sort of skills through a game. Where there's structure from leadership, from the DM and from older players and younger players. So there's different tiers of skill where they're rewarded by the game and by the experience of getting more cooperation means a better game. Now, there are other games where you just sabotage, but even then, you sabotage, the other person sabotage you back. So there's still give and take, where I would argue that this peer orientation that we have now rewards people that just sabotage and they're unfindable. The feral kids.
They're no fun to play D&D with either.
Let's see. So this is sort of the same thing. If you're overmanaged, superego, other people saying wrong, right, and all this managing, you're not in the driver's seat. You're letting other people manage you. Or you want somebody else to say, am I doing it right? Blah, 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 blah. Welcome, Gami. You missed all the conflict.
Oh.
We'll try to bring some more for you. Let's see.
There is a tremendous crisis of confidence in today's parents and teachers. And that confidence is because they're not going from the place of natural intuition. It is the only way to restore
confidence. So, if your id and your intuition is a doorway to your confidence, giving you more tools creates confidence for your superego, for your manager. But does it connect you to your intuition? Does it connect you to your insight? Does it make it feel more natural, or does it make it more managed and layered and distanced?
Inner confidence. The problem is that as soon as we start letting experts tell us what to do, as soon as we start parenting by Google, as soon as we start parenting by book, it dumbs us down. Why? Because we're not thinking from the place. It's just like somebody was telling you to put the dishes away. Remember when you were a kid? Your parents were telling you, do this, do that, do that, and you don't get it from the inside. Why? Because you've got to be in the driver's seat. Natural intuition, to be in the driver's seat.
So this happens in my Zen group. Somehow the teacher is evil and slowly wants to give tasks to new people as fast as possible. So there's Kinhin, the person who leads the walking meditation. Then there's a bell timer who rings the bell at certain times. And then there's chant leader. So until I had to do these roles, I wasn't paying attention. And then I got the bell thing, and the bell thing is complicated. So you got like 3 bells before the sit, then 2 bells before the kinhin. Then the final bell is 1 bell and a clank. But that's not the final bell, because there's a chant that has another bell that rings out the group. None of that is written on the cards. So imagine meditating, and you're the bell ringer. You're trying to remember what to do to not fuck up while you're meditating. So you can spend 20 minutes just like, what is the right thing? I don't want to fuck up. So my last meditation, somebody was doing the bell, and she made a mistake, and no one mentioned it. But I was being sort of a leader, just trying to give her some clues when I could. Because until you're in the driver's seat, you don't feel the excitement, you don't feel the anxiety of performance. Oops.
And so it dumbs you down when we take direction. It dumbs us down, whereas insight smartens us up. It increases our confidence to be in the driver's seat. Increases our confidence to be in the driver's seat.
So this is part of the argument that you need some level of exposure to deal with aggressive, manipulative personalities. If you don't have that exposure, no amount of overmanaged practice tools, whatever, is going to be the same as being in the driver's seat, dealing with it in real time, live fire with someone that you're invested with, or someone that you can't just instantly disappear from. Or maybe you're lucky and you already have a personality where you don't like taking orders. So you can channel some Tucker Carlson when you get over-ordered.
I don't like to be told what to do at all.
Really?
No, like at all.
Yeah.
At all. It's like I have a moral claustrophobia about being told what to do. I'm happy to do things.
Yeah.
I don't mind serving other people, but it has to be voluntary. I can't be ordered around. Don't mind taking advice or wise counsel from people I respect.
So if your inner children have this attitude and your superego is only about giving orders, how well of a relationship are you going to have with your inner children? Are they going to take over stuff and blow things up more when you're just ordering it around by trying to get more tools so I can impose dominance over inner children?
Respect, or I'm often wrong. I'm not saying that I'm always right. I'm definitely not. But being ordered to do things suggests a level of disrespect I just can't deal with it at all.
Was there even a time when you were working at different news places where you were like, gosh, this still isn't my own voice?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
It was always my own voice, but you could feel the parameters. I mean, I started in my 20s, mid-20s. You feel vulnerable and like, you're not allowed to say certain things. And I do think I was never censored, but I self-censored for sure. To allow yourself to be convinced because it's super unpopular to say it's not a good idea, but it clearly wasn't. People go along with stuff that their gut tells them isn't the right thing, but you should never ignore your gut, your instincts, which you inherited from your ancestors, which are encoded in your DNA and which are almost never wrong. If you're with someone and you feel like, God, that person's lying, that person's lying.
Right.
You may not know what about, you don't have x-ray vision into someone's soul, but you can smell the deception on someone. The only thing that enrages me is when you hear people say, you must believe me. I have no obligation to believe anybody. You have an obligation, if you want me to believe you, to
channel
prove what
this.
you're saying.
Right.
And I have a right to ask simple, fair questions. How do you know that? How can I trust that? And if you don't give me those answers, then I just don't believe you. And I don't have to believe you. And if your recourse is, you're a bad person for not believing me, fuck you. That's my response. Fuck you. You can smell the deception. I have a moral claustrophobia about being told what to do. Fuck you. Prove what you're saying. Fuck you. Prove what you're saying.
This is a video, so if you're getting triggered, he's just talking to the air, not talking to you. But if you're taking it personal, then you could work with that too. So a lot of times we have this, you're a bad person, you should listen to me. So that's sort of this disapproval. Try to trigger that belonging rejection wound. And we don't have enough role models that say, fuck you. Why should I listen to you? Prove it. Make an argument. Sometimes I do that in the group, and then people stumble and they shut down. So I don't use it that often. Because most people just make statements. They don't have a coherent argument. They can't prove it. So it creates embarrassment when you challenge them to prove what they're what their beliefs are. It just is, and they just freak out. So peer orientation versus adult orientation. So adult leadership is learning how to be disciplined, and learning how to navigate in the world from a mature adult standpoint, where you can get stuff done. Part of that means you get into the driver's seat and you might make mistakes. You might have some accidents. There's a learning curve. Is there a way to prevent the learning curve? Over managers will say, oh, hire me, I'll give you more courses forever. There's a lot of incentive to overmanage, to overteach. Somehow we don't trust human evolution of thousands or tens of thousands or however long humankind has been surviving through catastrophe and all kinds of stuff without technology. Somehow humankind is pretty resilient, but now we think there needs to be all kinds of help for some reason. Let's see. So one thing is maybe culture is also arguing. There's a counterculture movement, social justice warriors, progressives, who want to tear down all hierarchies, make everything flat. Peer orientation, that's essentially what they're doing. But also when you take away culture, are you also taking away rituals and wisdom that's embodied in the culture? And is there a price for that?
Culture was embedded in wisdom, the rights, all the roles. When you had a role, you knew what a father should do. You didn't have to ask, this is what fathers do. This is what big brothers do. This is what big sisters do. This was the role of a mother. There was no stronger role than the role of a mother. No stronger scripts than what to do.
So if you have a society now where people don't feel any belonging, is it because they don't know what role they fit in? They don't have any validation that they're doing the role enough because it's undefined. And it's undefined by culture. Then therapy will say, you need to set more boundaries. You need to decide what you think your role is. You need to decide what a parent is. You got to decide all this crap where culture used to do it. And not only culture used to do it, culture did it and refined it to some sort of efficient way of being a parent or sister and all this stuff. Now you're supposed to do it with no life experience and just decide what an efficient role is for you. And then the therapist is just going to manage your feelings, and they suck at giving any OT, any life skills. That's what we talked about 2 weeks ago. You have culture that's abandoned you, or we've abandoned culture. And therapy says set boundaries, define it all yourself. Your race, your gender, your amory, it's all on the table for you to define. Look how great that is. That's not going to cause anyone to come to a meeting and say, I'm confused, and I don't even need to know how to ask questions because I'm just confused. Is it my fault you're confused, or is this culture's fault? Is it the access information from Google that's made you confused? Is too much YouTube that's made you confused? Why should I be responsible for your confusion?
So the scripts were there. You played mother when you were a child. You played family. All of these kinds of things. The scripts were there. You didn't ask what to do. It was in your DNA. It was part of the culture that passed down. And that was the power of culture. In the age of materialism, the dollar has become more important. We've lost our culture. And when we are stripped of our culture, we are laid bare to our own instincts, emotions, and needs. Culture protects us from it. Culture says, what do I do in this occasion? So I don't have to take the cues from inside of me. They're part of culture. They're implicit in this way. However, when we're stripped of culture, the voices inside of us become loud, our own emotions, our own instincts, and so on. Now, instinct is not the same as intuition. Instinct is more an urge. Intuition is more a hunch. Intuition puts us in the driver's seat. It puts us back in control. And instinct drives us. Emotions drive us. They push us rather than draw us into. And so they're very, very different. And heaven help our children when we take our cues from our emotions, needs, and instincts. Parenting was not supposed to be about us. We're supposed to be there for them. Giving authority to what we feel like doing at the moment is the worst kind of tyranny and chaos in parenting. Our culture had protected us from our own emotions and instincts. When we lose our culture, we lose that protection. Secondly,
so culture could be subculture. So having a family that has some norms, so order to prepare you for the world, but also to prepare you for your current world. That could be missing. A lot of people in my group seem to be between two cultures. I grew up between two cultures. And then my mom created a subculture of traditional Chinese culture, which wasn't fully Chinese. So then I had to orient myself in that distorted culture. And maybe a lot of codependents grow up in a distorted cult-like culture. Then they go out into the real world, and there's a dissonance between those two cultures. So a lack of a culture that you can rest into and rely on creates more confusion inside of you. So then you're more drawn to finding love bombing and really powerful leaders.
in this absence and knowledge vacuum that we have, many of today's parents are reaching out to everyone, everywhere. Parenting by Google has become a mainstay of today's parents. Peer orientation as adults, that has taken over. Of course, this is not helping to insight. They offer rare insight, only all kinds of instructions about what to do. The more likely we are to become victims of the fundamental attribution error. Most of our behavior does not reflect our intentions. And often we don't have intentions when we behave.
He goes into this more on that video, but not enough. This fundamental attribution error is like, you see a behavior and you assume there's an intention. Then you just impose a new belief and you think that changes the behavior. Behavior change is not so easy. So that's also a way why people feel too guilty. You're not recognizing spontaneity and emotions and frustration tolerance. You act out. That's the norm. To try to discipline it, that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of repetition. In your mind, you can believe you can discipline it and you feel it, but the actual behavior change takes a lot of effort and time. So it's a cognitive bias to make a link, say, oh, I did it, therefore I intended it. This person did it, therefore they intended it. They can just decide and then behavior will change in the future.
But I can assure you, when it comes to problem behavior, that well over 95% of the problem behavior of children was never intended, was not on purpose. The problem when we think it's on purpose is we get on the wrong side. We start with an adversarial relationship with our child.
This is also part of the peer orientation. When you see your child or see other people as your peer, then you think their judgment kills your belonging, because we're all in this sort of wild west, and everyone's scared of breaking a rule or being seen as a bad person. Instead of trying to get the job done, instead of doing the best they can. The emotions get mixed up when everyone's peer-to-peer.
Fourthly, we're more likely to adopt strategies that are short-sighted and self-serving. We want the child to behave right now, not to be upset right now.
Too much information, too much feedback, too many peers that are saying, oh, you're doing it wrong, buy my book. Too many sources of information is creating this excess feedback of, let's get the results done fast. And if you focus on behavior, you can start doing dehumanizing tactics. Like, I can chop off this person's head and that makes them silent. Yeah. So where do you draw the line on doing behavior change that's fast and efficient? But then when is it too much? So if you're so focused on the outcome and the urgency, then you aren't mentoring. You aren't being a parent. You're going to beat up some inner children. That was the last meeting. Neglecting. We've been neglecting inner children. So Act 3 is supposed to get into sadness and futility. How do we switch from that? So I've noticed a lot of spirituality, ultimately meditation, forgiveness, and Christianity. They're essentially sadness practices. And a lot of terror of negative emotions is trying to avoid grief. They're sadness stoppers. So we're sort of grief stupid. So Gordon Neufeld, he argues that sadness and futility are linked. So maybe we'll do this first and see where it goes.
Sadness is the most maligned and misunderstood of all feelings. Sadness, my whole life is about healing. I can't make them better. Nobody can make them better. What has made them better, without exception, is when they have been able to find their sadness. Sadness, what they were up against that could not have been changed, that happened to them, that was now in the past, that they couldn't make better. Their sadness. Encounters of futility need to be turned. The sadness, feelings of futility.
So you're out in the world as an adult. You're gonna fuck up. Part of being human. When you fuck up, you come short, you're gonna feel futility. When you feel futility, if you have space to feel it, then you can feel the sadness and then you can adapt from that. But if you don't have space to feel the futility and you're overmanaged, you stop the sadness. Postpone it till later. Postpone it till a giant grief in the future, and then the flood of sadness comes. And then the flood of sadness comes you can't contain it. So then you have an attachment figure who also can't contain it, because our society is lacking people that can hold space well, people that can be alone, be with you in your aloneness, with your sadness, to help you get renewed and find the way out. This is part of being human.
Over time, encounters with futility, as simple as Daddy said no, not being able to get one's way, must be felt. Their sadness for adaptation to occur. Their sadness must be felt. Relief from the pressure of...
So sadness is very adaptive, and when it's felt and processed through the system, then the integration process of adaptation can happen afterwards, or rebirth or some transformation afterwards. But the feeling of sadness has to consume you, rob you. So the sadness devours you. The futility is accepted, and now you can get back up and tackle the next challenge. But if you stop the sadness, then your system is skunked up, maybe a little munched up. But sadness gives you relief from the pressure of stuck emotions.
Stuck emotion, because this is where our mad moves to sad, our alarm moves to sad, our pursuit moves to sad. This is where we're released from the pressure of emotion, where there's emotional reset, where our big emotions like frustration and alarm find resolution, because, oh, we can't get through this way. All the emotions have purpose. They all want to do something. They all have work to do, but sometimes the work can't be done. That's where the futility needs to be felt. There's sadness.
Sadness also is where you reach your limit. You had a goal, you had something you wanted to get, you didn't reach it, feels futile, you feel sad. You take the loss, you take the sadness, then you can get back up, tackle the next challenge. But if you stop the sadness, or you were punished for being sad, you were judged for being sad, then you don't know how to adapt, because you didn't have someone to witness your sadness or to help guide you through the sadness. To not even guide, maybe just to be there next to you and not do much, not to invade your sadness.
And the whole demeanor changes. Everything demeanor. So easy to see, to be felt. There's sadness. And the whole demeanor changes. Everything demeanor. So easy to see in the 3-year-old and the 4-year-old. It gives us rest from doing the same things over and over again that do not work. It also is the key to discipline, because when you discipline a child, you confront them with the futility of their action. Look what I'm going to take away from you. You can't get through this way. Unless they feel sad about it, they will have not learned.
Unless they feel sad about it, that's part of discipline. So sadness is part of discipline. That's recognizing a loss, feeling bad, so then it sinks in. And not just sinks in, maybe it taps into your adaptability. And then if you have it perverted, like I'll give you something to cry about, that's changing the circuit. It's changing your natural adaptation circuit into a fear circuit. Creates a double bind. You want to be sad to fall apart, then come back up after the collapse. But bam, you get a punishment, and now you're afraid to be sad. And you're using fear to try to adapt. And I guess it sort of works, because fear is an urgent thing, but it's not, it doesn't reset.
It is emotional. We need to feel it. When a child doesn't feel sad about what's been taken away, there will be no learning that happens. Only when we feel our sadness can we let go of how it used to be, what we miss, what we long for, of what it was, and it be replaced by new ways. That is the work of sadness. Recovery of the capacity for fulfillment. Much of our happiness is on the other side of tears that have not been shed. We are so afraid of this place, so fear of the abyss, that we lose our own happiness, think we can get it directly by trying to be happy. You can't get it at directly by trying to be happy. Develops resilience as...
So there's a shortcut to sadness where people try to cover it up with toxic positivity. But that's an artifice, a frozen type of thing. If you feel the sadness, then you can be renewed, and then you can have spontaneous happiness or bittersweetness. So that's another benefit, to recover this different type of joy.
Directly by trying to be happy. Develops resilience as strength results from facing and feeling futility. The brain gets it that when you've had your tears, you can actually survive something not working. When it registers, futility registers, the brain goes, you're still here. You survived. Until then, the brain doesn't know that.
So this is part of earlier teaching of you get your trauma invalidated. You feel like you're about to die. Then you check your body and say, wait, fuck, I didn't die. But until you get to revisit that trauma, that memory, feels like you're going to collapse and is futile and the world ends. But when the world continues, then that dissipates that energy. I give you more tools to get away from that. That validates the fear. Never again. Go there again. Danger, danger.
Restores hope and perspective. Not trying to think oneself into perspective. Sadness delivers us there. In fact, you could say that emotional health is really about adapting to life circumstances. Their sadness must be felt. Sadness.
So sadness is a doorway to adaptation. Helping people be sad more skillfully makes them adapt, but it also makes them grow up and have a different voice. So if you want to create a slave, stop their sadness. If you want to create somebody that's more functional and can have their own voice and ability to adapt to change and grow, help be with their aloneness and go through the doorway of sadness. And it's sort of an organic process. So it's hard to give you a formula. I'm still sort of hacking out witnesses for myself, so I made this clip to sort of soften the sadness. That's part of the sadness's goal, but it's hard to capture, so I don't know how this is going to fall. I have to be anxious and vigilant about my tendency to split. That makes me stupid. So I have to monitor my nervous system and monitor my potential rage or overreacting, because I'll just go for the kill on whatever's the task I'm on, the biggest pain, the biggest grief. I'll just put my heart into it, and that'll break social convention. That'll also put me in harm's way. It's been a secret I've been holding. I didn't fully understand, and then it's also a fear of having to contain that. So I get flooded by their grief because contagion. Then I fall into their frame because I get disoriented by the flood. Now, I can hold my frame if I have enough context. So this is part of my superpower and my curse. So I fall into pain and grief instead of guilt about pain and grief. So when you guys give me grief from your grief to try to motivate guilt out of me, I can shapeshift to try to find words for your grief, bring it up and force you to feel it, or force me to act it out. That's the magic sauce of a lot of this group. And then when it's acted out, then that helps you adapt. When it's felt by you, would be better, but if it's not, I can try to feel it and act it out for you. So then you can learn the skill. So David, you not trusting, like, where's the tools? Well, that's the tool. I shortcut by merging with your grief, trying to get your pain and grief to come out and get it acted out. So then that activates the adaptation process. David, weren't you complaining like on, I feel confused and futile? Weren't you essentially saying, I feel there's no hope in arguing? So I was trying to evoke sadness, futility in you to try to wake up your adaptation circuits, to give voice to your sadness so that you can become renewed. But yes, no one else does this. You don't see it, it's confusing, it's hard to trust. Keep coming back and you can, see it work for other people and then do baby steps. So then I won't be flooded by their emotions and fall into their frame. But if I'm disoriented, knocked off balance, then I'm prone to getting flooded by other people's stuff or their anger and rage. And then I fall into their frame. The terror of losing control of my reality is a regular anxiety I feel. So I withhold sharing that because the intensity floods other people, but it also makes them join in this space of no self. And the flip side of it is when other people split into their superego, they flood me with their stuff and I tend to merge with their pure pain and grief. Socially, I'm forced to not address that pain and grief because they have a guilt injunction to try to split it off into a simple black and white framing. So I have to feel their grief, merge with their grief, not get any context about it, and sort of witness them avoid their grief and just see this pattern continue. And that hurts. But I'm merging with their grief. I lose my... Confusion is not something you understand. Pure pain and hurt can't put into words. You can intellectualize it, then I can flood you with my confusion and then see how well oriented you are. My sense of language to say it hurts to meet them there. I'm just merged with their id. Ultimately, this is the goal. You need your id to get integrated as adulthood. And you have to... Actually, you merge with id already. It's just stigmatized. Your ids want to play with other people's ids, and then two people are triggered and it's a dumpster fire because it's not done skillfully. It's not done in a structure that allows controlled chaos. So having space for aloneness, ids merging, allows shared desires. It allows playful passion. So if I'm in a world where I have to constantly keep a cap on my intensity, it's not because I'm scared of seeing it myself. People can't relate to it, and it floods them. So intuitively, after my traumas at 29, I would try to share to make sense of it, and I saw people get flooded. So I self-silenced, self-isolated. And that's still the case. Maybe my splitting is pain and grief, and it's also pure shame. fragmentation. So my part of self-silencing sometimes makes me harder to witness people that just take up a lot of space. Because that's another skill. So some people have the skill of taking up space, and since my mom has that skill, and I have the opposite part of getting all my space taken up all the time and not having a voice to take up space, it's harder for me to speak the language of people who can take up space. But I can speak the language of your inner children part that don't have a voice. But it's inherently hard to put into words. Falling apart? Falling apart? I can't self-witness if I fully go into it. So I can't welcome what survives after. I don't know. Regressing out in some singularity. Singularity, another term for the center of a black hole. The void. Singularity.
My feeling of it is that not being seen from the fish, when people witness it, they become pigeons. They become too hard, too schizoid, too information, not you.
Academic, maybe.
I just see sadness now in Deef. I'd never seen him so sad before.
Part of it is being seen, but it's more so that I think this next level of non-self is more about finding my next self or recongealing a self through interactions and feeling out of this maybe new level of emotional intensity.
Feeling
to
out
be
the
more
stone,
spontaneous. So the more I can be more spontaneous and intense and just get lost in that grief, the more I'll see patterns and find myself. So we get good at throwing a tantrum and then directing it out at somebody else to change behavior. I think maybe the traditional way is you have your tantrum, you throw it outward, then you realize it doesn't work on any other people. Then you have your tantrum of intense emotions inside. And you need somebody else to sort of be around to make sure the world doesn't collapse. So someone to deal with your aloneness. Then you can find yourself in that internal collapse, that internal tantrum. But since our society covers up grief and doesn't allow people to break down into that inner stuff, people don't build those connections. I'm still working on building those connections. See patterns and find myself. But if the world is highly terrified of negative emotions and intensity and chaos and unknown, there's no playgrounds for this. See patterns and find myself.
Or you will create someone and go back in time and then see yourself. That's trickier.
There's a formula. You don't have a witness, you can train someone to be a witness and go back in time and get it done. Be the leader instead of being a peer and just crying. Get it done.
You're holding a space. So what happens when you want to express, when you want to explore your range? Who's holding the, Are you allowed to do that here? Probably not. Are you feeling sad, Steve? You look sad.
Well, it's not about needing to feel it or being seen. It's about being able to play in the intensity to find myself, see patterns and find myself, to discover myself, to fall into this self or to feel safe in this self. There's no observer that's seeing the self. It's just potential, play in the intensity to find myself. Potential. So this is a more intense version. This is a softer version of the same sort of pointer. You guys are making a common argument that being seen is some giant wound. or the core wound. It's common out there. And I'd agree to that to a point. I would argue that having space to find yourself, to see yourself, that might be the missing element. It's about having somebody else or a community to allow you space to discover your unseen parts by yourself. We're putting too much expectation on someone else to discover our unseen parts by yourself. Because if you haven't discovered it by yourself, it's kind of unreasonable to expect somebody else to discover that. Maybe you wanted your parent to do that as a child. But adult to adult, that's not on the table. I don't have your childhood history. The odds of me seeing your unseen parts or discovering that, loving it, is nil. Genuine reaction. So space for aloneness, that was sort of the inspiration of this theme, finding somebody who can be with your aloneness, or someone who's comfortable with their aloneness, so they can be with your aloneness without invading your aloneness. That's the same territory as holding space, but I think it's a bit more precise on the aloneness. But that's tricky. Because we don't have that many role models for that. But that is something that D.W. Winnicott labeled as a sign of emotional maturity. This capacity to be alone. I think this was one of the few videos that sort of talks about it.
Have you ever wondered about the link between solitude and love? Humans exist on a spectrum between solitude and companionship. Our capacity to be alone finds its roots in childhood. Those who could comfortably play by themselves were developing vital self-soothing skills. As adults, the ability to be alone without feeling lonely is a sign of emotional maturity. It means one can find peace within themselves. But not everyone is comfortable in their own company. For some, the silence brings anxiety, not solace. But why does this capacity to be alone matter in relationships? Because it reflects our relationship with ourselves. Being comfortable alone often means a person has cultivated self-love. They don't rely solely on external validation. Dependency arises when we seek in others what we haven't found within ourselves. Independence, on the other hand, means two wholes coming together. Solitude isn't about loneliness. It's a state of reflection, of understanding oneself. In relationships, those comfortable with solitude often bring understanding, patience, and self-awareness. It's a paradox. The more we're able to be alone, the deeper and more authentic our connections with others can become.
But maybe you also need a role model of adult leadership to be with you in solitude as a bridge.
To truly love another, one must first understand and love oneself. And sometimes that journey starts in solitude. So, the next time you find yourself alone, embrace it. For in that silence, you may discover a universe of love.
That's the tip. That's not very, bit too pie in the sky. Okay, so maybe solitude and aloneness might be linked to rest, using Gordon Neufeld's model. Attachment, feelings, rest, and play. It feels like a similar territory.
Rest versus sleep here. Now,
so this is the mindset of somebody trying to get shit done. You become the answer. Stop looking for answers outside from experts and whatever and saying, that's not good enough, that's not good enough. You figure it out. you're an adult. Is it time, or do you want to be an adult? You figure out the answer, and then here's some clues. Attachment, feelings, rest, and play are a foundation for having a solid base.
Sleep here. Now, sleep is the analogy, but it's not the same as rest, because we know we can sleep and not at all be rested. Our bodies need to be in a rest mode. Our brains need to be in a rest mode. How does rest take care of a child? It is a state in which all true growth takes place, fosters recovery and restoration, gives attention and emotions a break. Emotions don't even get a break at nighttime because they're in charge of encoding our memory, and they're also in charge of our dreams. So emotions need a break. Revitalizes energy, optimizes functioning, allows for reset and renewal, enables the processing of experience and the coding of memory.
So there's rest, and there's also relaxation. So can you relax with others? Can you relax with yourself? So that gives a break for your emotions. That gives you restoration. That gives you a state where growth can happen. So do you have people that you can be with that will hold space for you to be in this restful relaxation state? Can they be a sounding board to help you process the emotions, or use their brain as a processing emotion instead of you having to do all the work? Or do you have somebody else who covers up all your emotions and then numbs you out? That's a form of rest, which would be more escape.
It's important. It's important. And so where does rest come from? Well, kind of comes from feeling attached. If you don't feel attached, you don't get to feel rest. It's when you feel cared for and cared about. As I put here, it brings rest from the most preeminent need of all, work of attachment. And of course, these feelings of attached to feel satiated, secure. And sadness is part of it, because sadness is the letting go. It's where we rest from what doesn't work. Rest results from the feelings of attachment that result from feeling safely attached in a dependent mode to a caring adult.
Long formula, but in the D&D model, the person, the brother or the son, felt attached to the group and the rules, and then he cared about the game, he got invested, so that provided a structure to explore and play in that aloneness. And then also he's being attached to his younger sister and helping along there. So maybe it doesn't have to be a super dependent, caring adult. It just needs to be attached to somebody who's a leader and you're willing to follow. But if you're in this pure orientation where you're just going to poke anybody as a leader and test them and shit test them until they all fail, and that becomes your identity, a character defense of just mistrust all the time because that's all you know, then you never get to rest. You never get to true play.
The top 7 strategies here, I'll just list them. Engage in collecting often and for no apparent reason. Just engage the attachment instincts, the eyes, the smile, and a nod. Just engage them for no apparent reason.
Just keep in touch, track people. So when I'm trying to track people, that's a way of collecting and keeping tabs on people, showing physical presence of tracking.
Nurture the relationship and establish an alpha lead by providing a touch of proximity to hold on to.
Oh, maybe that's the 1, 2. So tracking, you're collecting, and then you're creating proximity. The proper amount of psychological distance.
A touch of warmth, a touch of significance, a touch of sameness. Convey a warm invitation to exist in your presence. Make it safe to attach by preserving the connection. It's our job to hold on to your children. Bridging anything that could divide. Don't let anything come in between. Focus on what stays the same, what's important. I'm still your dad, I'm still your mom. Don't let anything break the union.
Isn't this opposite than boundaries? This constant policing, like if there's any negative, cut people off. It's almost, I could make an argument that the way people teach boundaries is actively trying to break attachment. And then the more the general public is broken attachment, the more people need therapists. The more they need managers, the more they need all these administrators. I think self-managed is a pointer. So by having too many teachers manage conflict, kids forget how to self-manage. They forget how to deal with conflicts themselves. They forget how to rupture, repair, and keep the attachment going by themselves. They rely on external figure, so they're dependent the rest of their lives.
Inspire trust and dependence by taking care of the child. That's our job. Fulfill attachment needs by always providing more than is pursued. Stay in the lead again. Just like inspire trust and dependence by taking care of the child. Be in the need. Present yourself. Inspire that.
So give more and present yourself. Stay in the lead. Present yourself. Show up. So much of this modern defense is like hiding behind other teachers and aphorisms and words. Where are you? Do you know where you are? Are you letting other people know where you are? How can other people attach you or see you if you're shifting all the time?
And so we come back then to the end, the womb analogy slide again. We are to be the answer for someone to depend upon, to take care, to serve as a home base to retreat to and to venture forth from, to be a safe place for their feelings to recover, to catch up with them, to hold on to them, and not let anything come between.
So first you have an intermediary, a different parent, some group that can be your solid anchor, and then ultimately you can internalize that as a healthy superego, as a healthy internalized parent. This sort of has to be practiced. This different orientation of leading and following, taking turns, give and take. It's a different way of being than this pure orientation, leading from behind. So there's tons of managers that are pretend leading. So they'll speak the language of leadership by poking holes at everybody else. So indirectly, their status looks like it's rising by knocking down other people. But the trap is they're guiding everyone's attention into the past. The Bible would say this is the path of the devil. D-E-V-I-L is lived backwards. L-I-V-E-D, devil, D-E-V-I-L. Or wait, yeah. Devil. So, live backwards. Devil. If you're sabotaging everybody else and trying to get them to second guess and that you made a mistake here, you made a mistake here, double check yourself constantly. Are you playing the saboteur? Is this your path to beat God? To pretend like you're better than God? That's our Bible study, since Holly has been away for some time, so we're going to do Bible study without her. So, 9:20. Let's end it with a song that'll probably get me some copyright something. But it's a smaller song, maybe not. Let's see.
Sometimes I just wanna be lonely. Don't need you to hold me. If I'm low, you don't need to care. Let me be sad. What's the matter with that? What's the matter with that? What's the matter with bad days? It's okay, let me feel it. In some ways you gotta break your heart to heal it. I know I'm gonna feel this way again. I can lie and say I'm fine, but that wouldn't change anything. I've got chips on my shoulder, only getting older, so I keep to myself. Ain't trying to complain, just don't wanna explain it. But sometimes I don't wanna be happy. Don't hold it against me. If I'm down, just leave me there, let me be sad.
Some weird video things, but the lyrics are pretty on point. And a lot of maybe the Z generation, they've been covered with so much toxic positivity. There are some counter songs that say, give me space to be sad. Stop flooding me with your anxiety, helicopter parents. Let's give some space to sadness. Let's see.
And like hurt. Sometimes human beings have to just sit in one place and like hurt and like hurt. Sometimes human beings have to just sit in one place and like hurt and
like hurt.
That's all, folks.
I just wonder, where is the healing on this?
Where is the fucking compassion to just say, wow, you know, that's what's going on in her world? Where is the fucking compassion? Where is the fucking compassion? Where is the fucking compassion? Where is the...
Okay, after party. A bit clunky of a topic. We'll see how it comes out in the formal portion. Did it make sense for anybody? Takeaways? Insights?
Yeah,
Likes?
sit in my suck.
Sit in your suck. That's
Yes.
a takeaway. Yeah.
Feel pain, sadness. It's okay. I survived.
Yeah, I didn't get the
You survived?
complexity of the rest part either. Yeah.
Of the rest part?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, as far as there's more to it than just kind of taking time. I didn't realize how much so many other things, social things were also rest and a part of that.
Well, if you have attachment of somebody who's taking care of a lot of the hassles, you can rest in that protection.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can rest in the different roles. So somebody else is being a parent or handling things. You can rest in learning. You can rest in making mistakes in that substructure.
Mm-hmm.
You can collapse into somebody else's arms. That's something that sort of rest is a bit foreign for, CPTSD.
A little bit. Just a tiny bit, yeah. But it's there if you're not ignoring it and the opportunities, I think.
Yeah, I wonder how much meditation and other larger communities has that built in, but people don't notice.
How do you mean? The meditation link to
A good amount of meditation is just settling. So you have a lot of mind chatter.
Mm-hmm.
So your mind chatter is linked to emotional flashbacks, so then you can start over looping. So just having silence or something slowing you down, even nature immersion, settles a lot of the chatter. So then you can recognize your natural or more grounded state.
That's what I did going up to the lakes, Kelly.
Right.
Calming, being with myself, grounding the sadness. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I was in terms of rest, though, yeah.
Yeah, resting with myself, being alone with myself to get the mind chatter to calm down. Not having those diversions to go to.
Any particular part of it that
Yeah,
focus on, or
feeling the sadness, being alone with myself, had me going to deeper into myself, deeper into my soul, deeper into my childhood, deeper into my emotions.
and the environment helped you
Yes, immensely.
find that. Yeah.
Yes. Especially around the lake, the calmness, the water, the feeling of it.
I kept bringing that up to Liam. I did a walkthrough on the new place, and I was like, and it was so quiet. Looking forward to that.
That's good. Peace and quiet.
It's just a space I can, yeah. It's not Superman's, fortress at the South Pole? North Pole? I suppose North, because South is too busy. Yeah, wherever he does his Fortress of Solitude, that'd be mine.
Yeah. I'm here alone. I've been alone now for over 5 years. I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Because now it has time for me to reflect. Reflect and feel the emotions that I was avoiding all along.
Yeah, mine will be mixed, I think so. So I'm throwing myself into a whole bunch of other stuff, but I'll have somewhere to hide out and rest.
Rest. That's where I am now. Does that make sense, Steve?
Could you do a play on words that when you're in a place of rest, the rest of you can catch up?
Yeah. It's a double rest.
I hope so.
Yeah. Because that's part of, when you're crowded with urgency or chaos or busy environment, there's not much space or time to recollect.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce all going on, all kinds of anarchy with that. Chaos and anarchy with that. Now things have calmed down. Now I have time for me.
See, time for you, time for me, that sort of space.
Time for me to feel and get over whatever I'm dealing with, if that makes sense.
Oh, that could also be like an opportunity to re-find yourself.
Yes.
Because a
Bingo.
lot of society is like asking you to forget yourself, to put your emotions second. To
Yeah.
constantly abandon yourself.
Yeah. Now I'm finding myself.
Having a place of rest, having an attachment that allows you to rest and recollect yourself, to catch up the rest of yourself.
Mm-hmm. And it's awesome.
And it's awesome.
I feel a hell of a lot better than I did 3, 4, or 5 months ago.